here we are. So excited.
Wow.
I'm so excited to talk to you.
Here's what happened. Here's all of my thoughts. Like, here's what we were talking about. And like, here's what we're gonna do. And like we can use it as content because I know like we've just been like nerds about that.
Yeah.
And he just like looked at me and he was like, "So you're making a podcast?" And I was like, I don't know, Monica, like what God is doing in me right now, but like there's some stuff happening.
I'm so excited.
Right now I'm going with the word fearless for like my Mary Kay brand. So I like looked at Will last night and I was like, fearless, light conversation. But light spelled as an L-I-G-H-T.
Oh, that's
because
good.
it's not light conversation. We're having light conversation about being different and like asking real questions that I don't normally get asked.
Light conversation with Miranda. Like that's your podcast. Life, for instance, my background right now. Like when the camera came on, part of me was like, oh my gosh. But then part of me was like, you know what? No, like, yeah, that's my vision board that my 2-year-old destroyed with a Sharpie. And this is my unfinished basement. And like, and I'm just going to be okay with it. Like for a second, I was like, how do I angle this so that people, oh, can I show like that cute stuff? And I was like, you know what? No. Like this is my real life. I don't care what you think about my background.
Yeah. I was honestly more concerned about like with where is the best lighting so I don't look as terrible / I don't have like a fancy ring light yet or like a proper place to like put my thing so I feel like I'm looking down and there's like a terrible angle, like just like.
But those are all things that like
perfect.
Well, and like we're so taught to we're taught that if you don't have the ring light and the perfect angle to just not put anything out there.
Yeah, literally though. And that's why like my mantra I think for this year or whenever it was at some point this year was and has been imperfect action is better than perfect procrastination. Like I literally have been. It's a Mary Kay. That's where I heard it was from Mary Kay.
I know.
And that's what I've been living by. Like with everything that I've been doing in my life is that mantra.
Okay. I had this moment yesterday in my garden outside. So my husband planted this beautiful vegetable garden. Can you hear me okay? Am I breaking up at all?
I can.
Okay. He planted this beautiful garden. There's tomatoes and herbs and zucchini and cucumber and peppers and like there's all this beautiful stuff. And it's not all doing very well this year. Like it's kind of just like we're not seeing a lot of fruit happen.
Yeah.
But we have 5 ears of corn growing from a corn cob that he halfway shoved into the ground just to see what would happen.
Oh my gosh.
Like I was thinking about it yesterday. I was like, that is literally the perfect explanation of imperfect action, whatever you said. Because like all of the plants that we purchased and put perfectly in places with labels aren't doing anything. But the corn cob that he shoved halfway into the ground that we didn't eat for dinner one night is now way more fruitful than the stuff that we actually planned to have. That's what we have to do. Like stop worrying about the perfect, like stop worrying about all the details and just do the thing. And like, if you're supposed to be doing it, God is going to make it fruitful. And he doesn't care about the details. Hey,
sorry,
Will.
Did you hear
Is that the Will or the cat?
Well, was not the Will, it was the cat.
Okay. We wanted to talk about something specific today.
Yeah.
And it is the behavior of women in particular on social media.
And I feel like we can talk about this because we're women, so we're pretty experts in that.
Yep.
And so, okay. So I feel like the big question that I will ask, like, I think throughout, like, my personal podcast that I will start and having conversations with people is just, like, how do we be different? and I know we've been talking about this in our Mary Kay meetings, specifically on social media, which is obviously like where we're gonna go today, of just like, how can we be different? And I don't think it's not about being better. It's not about, because we're not better than anybody else. It's just, how do we be different? Like, that's it. All these thoughts, all these questions sparked from this one tiny interaction on social media. So I made a post where I was at a location for an event, and a person who follows me made a comment on it, on that specific post. It was a comment that I immediately took as negative, because they were starting an argument. They were, to me, they were starting an argument and looking for a fight. And so I immediately deleted the comment, because I personally choose to not allow hatred, negativity, mean, bullying, arguments, anything really negative on my social media platforms. Like, that's just not what I do. That's like what I choose not to do. At least I try my best to not do that. And so I had messaged this person, and I said, what did I say? I said, sorry, I deleted your comment because I don't appreciate the negativity. Response was, I'm calling you out. You don't have to like it. Do better. And so, of course, this person is looking for a fight. Mm-hmm. And, okay, I'm not a damsel in distress. I have had worse said to my face, let alone on social media. You know what I mean? But that's a whole other conversation, face-to-face versus social media. But I'm not used to these type of confrontations, because I don't get them a lot. So I'm just not used to it. So of course I'm physically getting heated. Your heart beats fast.
Face turns red.
You don't know. You can't breathe. So my brain is physically not getting enough oxygen to it. So how am I supposed to think properly? Do you know what I mean? You're in the moment of what do you do? What do you say? And of course my initial human reaction is to defend, to go on the defensive. So I responded with, I don't use my platforms to spread negativity or hate. And of course now I look back on that and I'm like, I wish I could have changed my verbiage, but you just can't, because it's the conversation happened in 5 seconds? You know what I mean? It's so fast. And so they responded with, it is not negativity when it's the truth. And so this took me to a thought process of, is that true?
No. I have to stop you, because I don't think I heard that. I don't think when we talked about this before, I heard that response on her end. If it's the truth, if it's not negativity, if it's the truth. Does she understand the world that we live in?
I know. And so my thought process, we're crazy enough where God led my brain to think bigger. So in that response, the facts of it was, it's not negativity if it's the truth. And into what they were talking about, they were right. She was giving me facts of true things that I did not disagree with. So I responded with, I can't argue with you there because you're right. And they never messaged me back. She liked my message, and then the conversation ended there.
Oh, she did my favorite thing.
Yeah.
Liked it.
Like and not respond.
I hate that we have the ability to like something someone said. This is what I always tell people. I'm like, if you just like what someone said, for tomorrow, what I want you to do is walk around all day, and anytime somebody says something to you that you agree with, just go.
That's why I responded in that way. But I know, like, in the matter of, like, what it was, I didn't agree with, and now that I've had time to, like, think about my feelings and what I was actually mad about, was the fact that they came at me on social media looking for an argument, to start an argument, to have an argument, and that was just plain mean.
Yes.
Like, it was negative to me because you're bringing negative confrontation over social media into my life. And if anybody like has an actual issue with me, they can direct message me, they can text me. I'd rather have the conversation to you face to face, but that's just me personally.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? But like, that's a whole other issue of, we shouldn't have to advertise that. Like,
no.
Because when people are doing it on the comments to make it public, they're looking for an argument. And as soon as I said, you're right, it ended. Because that's proof of they were looking for an argument and not to have a productive, constructive conversation, to look for solutions, to actually look for options.
Correct.
You know what I mean? Like,
again, the behavior behind it all is so fascinating to me. It's like when you put a screen between you and the person that you're communicating with, it creates this false sense of security that like protects you from the other person's feelings. Like if she were standing in front of you, she wouldn't have said any of that, because your emotional response would have affected her in some capacity. Like some people are more naturally empathetic than other people. I am one of them. I am an empath, and it can be good and it can be really bad, because I feel what other people feel. I feel what other people feel so strongly.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that now that there's a screen in front of us, we're kind of protected by that, because I'm not seeing your reaction to what I'm saying.
Right, because you lose the vocal intensity, or like the actual verbal way that you say it. You lose facial expressions, you lose body language. And I feel like just as humans, like we can give off a vibe. So like you're losing like that, the energy between you and the purpose of the conversation. So yeah.
Do you mind if I tell my story about it? Mine's very similar to yours.
Please.
Mine is very similar to yours. So about a month ago, which you know where I was mentally a month ago. For anybody watching this, I had a late miscarriage end of April. So I'm in a very dark place. I'm very sad, like whatever. And
whatever. That's just where you were.
Where I was. Anyway, so, and this is like right when the protests are beginning to happen for Black Lives Matter. I saw this video floating around the internet, and it was of a young girl. She was probably 8 years old, with a megaphone saying things about Black Lives Matter. She was at a protest. And I was like, that's really powerful. Like a young white girl standing up for Black Lives Matter.
Little blonde girl.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm sure you saw it.
Yeah.
So some girl, acquaintance from college, aren't they all? An acquaintance from college. I haven't seen in 9 years.
Right.
Comments on it. And she says, I'm not even going to watch this. I can't believe you would even post this with all of the amazing stuff out there that you could have posted instead. So I got all turned red. My heart started racing. I had to like talk to the Holy Spirit and like bring myself down a couple levels. So my response was, hey, whoever. I literally don't even remember her name, because that's how well I didn't know her. Like I don't even remember her name. I was like, okay, so-and-so. I'm really sorry that my post made negative, like some sort of negative feeling arise in you.
Yeah.
I said, obviously that was not the intent, and so feel free to unfollow me. Mm-hmm. She comes back, I can't make this up. She comes back and she goes, I unfollowed you a long time ago because I can't stand you, but I wanted to see what you had to say about this stuff. So I came to your profile on purpose to have a conversation. And so, I think that was the end of the conversation. I unfriended her. I got rid of her. But yeah,
But like that just makes me, my first thought is with that, you came to your profile to have a conversation conversation. Well, you didn't come to have a conversation because you started an argument. Like if she wanted to talk to you about it directly, she should have just messaged you.
Yeah. Well, and like, is it necessary to say I unfollowed you a long time ago? Like that.
No,
right there,
I don't think it is.
Like a dagger. Like why?
Like
how rude? Why are you being so rude?
Like to be mean.
Yeah.
Like that's one of my questions is like, why are we just so mean?
That's what I was just gonna say. That is my biggest question from all of this is like, especially women to women, woman to woman. Why are we being so mean to each other? And I think it's this lack of empathy that these devices are creating in us.
Yeah.
It's like, because I raise my kid and I tell anybody who's in my circle of influence, everybody is doing their best that they can do with the information that they have.
Yeah, I loved when you told me that the other day.
And it's true, like, in any scenario. I mean, like, I don't know, when you're driving, right?
Yeah.
Somebody cut me off the other day. And, like, my initial reaction was like, how dare you cut me off? And then I'm thinking, like, I don't know, he could have a wife in labor in the seat next to him and he could be racing to the hospital.
Yeah.
Like, bad, annoying things that happen to you, such as my post on Facebook coming up in your newsfeed that, I'm sorry, you actually searched for, is not directed towards you.
Right.
Like, I'm doing the best I can with the information I had. I think at one point my response to her was, maybe I backspaced this one, I don't know. My gut reaction was, I posted this because I'm a dance studio owner, so young girl, I'm very passionate about young girls and growing confidence in them. And so when I saw it, I was like, oh, I love it. A strong, powerful young woman. Of course I don't know. Again, like, why are we so mean to each other? Why are we so mean to each other?
You know how in Mary Kay, like when we ask people for a facial or whatever and like offer free stuff to people and they say no, and how we were told, I forget who by, was like, make up a good story in your head. If we're gonna make up a story and like think the worst, like, oh, they hate me, or I'm being rejected, or he cut me off in traffic, like clearly he's not the good driver. Like we need to like shift the mindset and like make up a good story. Like clearly his wife is in labor and he has to get to the hospital. You know what I mean? Or like, and I'm like, I think that's what I struggle with too, is like, how do we use that type of mindset to be different for the people who comment or message or post that stuff on our social media? It's like, oh, well, clearly, like, you know, I don't know, I want to like say like something weird of like, clearly they had something really intense happen in their life where they were triggered by this. You know what I mean? Like, I'm trying to make up a good story about it. You know, like, how do we do that? Like,
I know. And I like, as you're saying this, my initial gut reaction is like, we need to be in the word more. And we need to be more like Jesus. Because our human condition makes us think the worst.
Right. Exactly. Like we go to the worst possible scenario and we think of 10 different ones.
Yes. And I think on a lot of levels, we do that with people. Like, why did she look at me like that? Why did she look at me like that? Oh, what are you looking at? Instead of, oh, she probably thinks I'm cute.
Right. Yes, totally.
Like,
so when we're on, and I think this is something that I struggle with and that I have struggled with, and you knew that I was, especially when all of this, when the riots were starting and the big mask stuff, and it's hard, especially it was hard for me to figure out the balance between like, how do we take, or how has our world like taken these really big, important issues and make them political issues? And I think there's a difference between that. Just one of my bigger thoughts was, how can I see like just different people on my Facebook feed and stuff who have always like would post or say different things about fighting for everyone, or everyone should have equal rights, love for everyone, like big things, and then come after someone, whoever it is, and be the most judgmental. Like how hypocritical is that of us as humans to do that? And then like where's the balance between like loving everybody but also fighting for justice? Because I mean that's what Jesus tells us to do. Like we need to fight for the oppressed, fight for the poor, fight for the people who, like he came to save, because he came to save everybody. You know what I mean? So like where's the balance between that? Like, like so that's like my bigger question is like, how can we, the Sunday school answer, be more like Jesus and be different on our social media pages instead of everything else that we see from everybody else?
Yeah. And I want to come back to that, but I want to rewind because you said two things I wanted to comment on there. I think Julia said it, but somebody said the moment you start defending, you start devaluing.
Yes. Yep.
And I think people need to understand that. Like the moment you start defending your beliefs or your whatever, you're devaluing it. And so like for me on Facebook, I don't argue back. I don't use it as a platform to like defend myself. Like
because I don't think we should have to defend.
No.
That. I don't think anybody should. You know what I mean? Like because we shouldn't be having those arguments.
Is not the statement, "Oh, you're Christian, you're judgmental." Is that not the most judgmental statement you've ever heard? Like, oh, because I'm Christian, I'm judgmental, but isn't that you placing judgment on me because I'm
right?
That one kills me.
It's the endless evil cycle of like the human condition. And I think that's the thing too, is that there's that stereotype, and then there's also just like people out there in the world. I mean, obviously we see them. We had on our college campus, we had Bible Bob, who would stand out in the oval of our campus with a sign that said, "You're going to hell if you are this, and this." And so it's just like these big worldly life questions that I honestly don't know if we're ever going to have the answers to. And some of them, I don't think we're ever going to have the answers to until we're in heaven with God. And like, he gives us clarity on like what really matters and the answers to those things. But like, I guess for us, and at least for me, it's a question of like, how do we be a different human being, specifically a woman, a female, specifically a woman who has a relationship with God, and believes in Jesus, and who wants to like actually love people and share the word and just be different, like not like crazy stereotypical people judgment, like that type of thing. You know what I mean? Like, so how do we like be different than that?
I think we know how to be different. I think the hard part is that we have to cope with the fact that it will always make us different. And I think it took me a long time in my Christian walk to understand that Jesus was hated by a lot of people.
Yeah.
Most people. And prosecuted, and like, look at he was killed. I mean, he was murdered for being the light and the love and the truth and the way. And I think we just have to like be okay with that. And you ask like, how do we be different? We just keep doing what we do. Like we post positive things. And when people try to start arguments, we just shut them down in love. And what's really been fascinating to me lately is people, the common question these days is, how are you doing with everything? Right?
I
respond like, oh, I'm good. We're doing well. We're great. Like things are good.
Yeah.
Because I have a positive mindset. Like I could sit here and be really depressed that I just lost a child at 5 months pregnant and I don't know if I'll ever get pregnant again, and that my dance studio is on the brink of not functioning from, financial loss, and don't know about my husband's job. And like, there's a lot of things I could be really upset with right now, but I'm not. I'm like, it's all gonna work out. But
right.
So we had a family call, I don't know, last weekend. And somebody asked, they were like, how are you doing, Monica? And I was like, oh, I'm good. They were like, no, really, how are you? And I was like, better than I should be. Like, pretty darn good over here. And they're like, I think you're on the brink of a mental breakdown. Like, you're faking it. You can't really be good.
Oh my gosh.
But it's because we're different.
Yeah.
Like, as women of God, and especially women of God and Mary Kay, we are these little like bubbly pink things bouncing around.
It's like this pink air that we just like shove into the oxygen. People are like, how are you? I'm like, I'm great. Life is great. And everything's burning around us.
But it's like one of my favorite things about Mary Kay is I have learned that it's not fake, and it doesn't have to be surface level. Like, when you really do fill yourself with joy and surround yourself with positive people, like, it's not fake. I just have a really hard time. I have a really hard time like complaining and moaning about the negative things in my life, because that's just a waste of energy to me.
Oh yeah, exactly. We listened to our church service last night, and one of the teaching pastors, Kyle from Crossroads, was talking about like, it all looks terrible. Like 2020 is a dumpster fire, like it's all terrible. But like, we are told, what's the verse? I would have to, like, where Jesus literally tells us, in this life, you will have trouble.
Yup.
He tells us this should not be a surprise to us. Like, oh no, like, we're in a pandemic, which is not a joke, but like, this should not be a surprise to us, like, because like Jesus tells us we are going to have trouble, we are going to have trials, like we are going to have tribulation, like whatever word you want to use, like, but he says, but I have overcome the world.
Yep.
So it's just the hope of truly believing like this is clearly not done because it's not Jesus. Correct. Because if it doesn't look like Jesus, like God's not done.
Right.
People are always like, Miranda, like, how can you be so smiley and optimistic and positive all the time? I'm like, well, this is just where my roots are planted. Like, I believe there's good and there's good happening, even though I'm skipping through a field that's on fire. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
I just thought it's okay. What character did I just think of? Olaf. I just thought of like Olaf skipping through fire. We are Olaf in fire with permafrost.
Yeah.
Like, Jesus is permafrost for Olaf. Like, that's who we are.
Yeah. Yep.
That's it. Next time somebody asks me how I'm keeping my cool, I'm just going to say permafrost.
Yes, there we go. Literally keeping your cool. Permafrost. Like, that's just what it is. So, like, Crossroads is doing Spark Talks, which is, like, a few different people, like, talking, like, for 6 minutes or whatever. Well, one of the guys who owns a gym, I forget what it's called right now, but he spoke, and he said how we always have a choice. So, like, with his example was with the shutdown and, like, his gym having to be shut down, like, he could make the choice of being shut down and obviously, like, not doing anything, to instead, like, God told him to expand. And, like, and his examples was they ended up doing, like, YouTube, Instagram live videos of, like, workouts to do at home, and it was all for free, like, and being generous that way, and expanding the people that he was being able to, like, reach out to, all these different things. And I think this ties back into what we said about Gary Vee, of just, like, being generous
Yeah.
and being true to who you are. And for us, you know, literally like obeying God and like what he's telling us to do, because like after he did was doing all those things, the community came back and like helped them financially. Do you know what I mean? So like it was just the shift of, even though it can look like your business is literally going to shut down, it looks like you never know when we're going to be able to work again, or whatever the thing that's placed in front of you, the trouble that's placed in front of you, like we always have a choice.
Yep.
And for me, that's like going back to this and like communicating with people on social media. It's like we have a choice on, okay, how do we react? And how and what do we say back? Because that is a choice that we get to make. And how can we choose to not allow our feelings to be the bus driver?
Yep.
Like I heard this from Allie, who's one of the other pastors at Crossroads. She said it this way. She goes, if our feelings, it's like we're in a car and your kids are in the car. Clearly,
car analogies are the best.
I know. She goes, clearly you wouldn't let your kids drive the car because that would be way too dangerous. And you can't just shove your kids in the trunk.
Are your kids your feelings? That's where we're going with this?
Yes. So like you can't shove your feelings in the trunk because that's not healthy, fair, good for you. You can't shove them in the trunk. You can't shove them down. And you can't allow our feelings to drive us, like anger, you know, because acting out in our anger brings, in my experience, nothing good to the table.
Nothing.
Do you know what I mean?
Girl, do I know what you mean? I think emotional management is the best thing in Mary Kay for women.
Yes. Like working through the emotional cycle and just like learning about that.
Yes, emotional management is huge. And Gary Vee said something in a recent video I watched that was like, and he said, when you can not only stop caring about the negative things people say about you, but when you can match that with not caring about the positive things people say to you, that's when the magic happens. And I was like, huh. And he was like, yeah, it's important to not let the crappy comments offend you, but I also want you to not care about how many likes you get.
Yeah.
Like when you can truly not care about what people think of you, that's when things start to get awesome, because you're not trying to impress. You're not trying to get people to like you. You're not trying, like, because you just don't care.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing about Gary Vee to me is that I think a lot of his platform and what he preaches about is a very Christian way to be. Because like for me, I translate that into, actually I was talking to Jenny about this. When you can find your identity, like your whole identity in Christ, that's when the magic happens. Like when you're not looking for parts of your identity in comments and likes and views and shares and retweets and blah, 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 blah. Like when you're really, truly not caring about any of that, you're just throwing stuff out there because you think it's going to benefit someone else.
Right.
That's where you want to be.
I like am trying to focus to be different and put content or posts out there that are like thought provoking and that just like make you think, because I feel like right now in my life, God is physically, like I can feel the growing pains of God is like molding my brain to think differently, to think more like him. And instead of like how I have thought in the past, which is really exciting. But like I can physically feel it. So like, putting stuff out there, like I feel like a fear or a anxiety for me comes in of like, where is it of like putting stuff out there and then like not wanting to like, oh, look at me, I'm the center of attention, I'm the star, I'm doing great things.
Yep.
Do you know what I'm trying to get at?
Well, there's a balance there because the way to help people through social media is that you have to be attractive to them.
Right.
And I don't mean like physically beautiful, but like there has to be an aspect of like to get to them, you have to make them want to see you.
Right.
So that's why social media is so tricky because it's because you're not because if I were to just show up in my pajamas with no makeup on, like looking like I just rolled out of bed with really powerful content that could change someone's life, they're probably not going to find it because without the likes and the shares and da 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 and the attraction, no one's going to see it.
Right.
So there is that really, really fine balance of social media that's intriguing to me.
Because my true intent is like I would want to share really good content that I'm kind of like also working through. So like my Instagram posts, you know, like some of the stuff that I write is like what I'm thinking, like what I'm going through. And I intentionally inside want to just share that with other people because I love sharing what I'm passionate about right now and what I think is like really good. And I just simply want to share it with others because I think it's so good.
Yeah.
And so like just intentionally wanting to do that and not being like, you should all follow me because I'm amazing, do really great content. Do you know what I mean? Because it's not about I'm better, follow me, but it's just simply like I want to put this stuff out there because I think it's really good and I just want to share it.
And when you can, I think when you can get that across in your content, people will follow you.
Yeah.
Like, I think the reason Gary Vee sometimes can be a little bit prideful in the way that he talks. Like sometimes I'm like, okay, Gary Vee, we know you love yourself, right?
Right.
But the reason people follow him is because he says things that help them and change their way of thinking.
Yeah.
And he's not like super attractive and putting out pictures of his abs and like being a model. Like he doesn't care. Like that's kind of like today I was like, I just worked out. I'm gonna go to this video with Miranda because I just worked out and I look like I just worked out. So here we are.
Right.
Anyway, but when you put out your thoughts that you're passionate about, that's what people will follow because they can feel the passion behind it.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, and I think that's just like what Gary Vee also talks about is just like being you and owning it.
Yeah.
And then like just being like your genuine self
Mm-hmm.
and just putting that out there.
Yep.
You know?
But that's attractive to people. Like that confidence is attractive. Like, and I thought about it this morning because I went to work out this morning and I have had 2 pregnancies. I don't go tanning. My legs are white as day. I have some fluff on me and fluff. I know I'm a thin person. But I say that because the rest of the people in my class were like freshly ex NFL cheerleaders, single 20 something. We went out last night, had 10 margaritas, perfect bodies, thigh gap, tan for days.
Oh my
And like
gosh.
a part of me was like really insecure for the first few minutes of class because my hips jiggle when I jump up and down and I have cellulite on the back of my thighs that everybody could see. And my leggings are not Lululemon. These are from Amazon. And
yeah,
I was feeling like crap because I was comparing me to them. They weren't saying anything or even looking at me. I was judging myself.
Yeah.
I was telling myself, I'm not tan enough, I'm not thin enough, I'm not hot enough, and I'm wearing cheap clothes. Yeah. Why do we do that to ourselves?
Yeah, and I feel like that's a really interesting thought. And I don't know where I've heard this before. It may have been another Gary Vee thing or something you had shared with me of like the comparison. Like we need to stop thinking that people are thinking about us and judging us because they're not. They don't care about you being there and what you look like. They're thinking about themselves because you are thinking about yourself.
Yes.
So they're probably doing the same thing next to you.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. And I think that's what Gary Vee has said, though, the part of like, we need to stop thinking about ourselves.
Yes.
And start thinking about others.
Yep.
Yeah. In like the loving, helpful way.
And when you do, And I did that. So in class, I was like, I'm going to stop thinking about myself and I'm going to start giving the teacher really good energy. Because I could tell that everybody else was thinking about themselves. He was a little bit nervous. Like, so you know what? I started just like turning and smiling at him and like being like, yeah, like I was always like the whoop whooper and I was being all loud and like doing my own thing. And everybody else was like looking at me and I was like, whatever. But when you start like pouring into someone else and stop focusing on you so much, everything changes.
Yeah, I feel like especially in a fitness class setting like that, when you know the teacher is going to like not a very good place to teach, but you start pouring into them, their cup is filling, they're going to give you a better class, the rest of the people next to you are getting a better class. And I feel like that's amazing that you did that, because you're just changing the vibe and the atmosphere for everybody, because instead of leaving like thinking, I didn't get the best workout today, the teacher was off, like I'm just not feeling that great, and leaving instead of like, I want to come back next week. Like,
yep. But isn't that exactly what we're saying with social media too, though? Like when you stop thinking about yourself and start putting stuff out there for others, that's when the game changes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think all those people that are looking for arguments and wanting to push their opinions and blah 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 blah, it's because they're thinking about themselves.
That's true.
Like, I'm gonna attack this girl for not wearing her mask, and it's gonna make me feel better.
Right. Like,
she
why?
Thinking about
how?
Right. Like she wasn't thinking about you at all in that moment. She was looking for something to make herself feel better and to be prideful. But as Christians, we can't look at her and hate her for that. We have to look at her as being in her human condition and just love her right back.
I know.
And it's so hard.
Yeah. And okay, this is kind of switching tracks here for a second, but with that, I had a really crazy thought the other day when I was thinking about all of this, was like how different people are, how we think, how we look, like we have different skin colors, like with people's sexuality, like how you identify, like we are all different.
Mm-hmm.
But how cool, or not but, and like how cool is it that God can use people where they're at, like who they are, to share him and the gospel with their community.
Yeah.
Like God uses everyone.
Yep.
Anyone, like specific people in a specific community to share his gospel with those certain people, because like I'm not a part of different communities. Like clearly I am not a beautiful African American woman, so I'm not a part of that. No, I'm not. Like that specific community, or I don't identify as LGBTQ community. So like, but there's specific people who are part of those communities that God is using or can use to just share the gospel and love those people in those specific communities. Do you know what I mean?
Girl, yeah.
So like it comes back to like what would actually happen, like literal heaven on earth. That's the only thing that can happen, is if and when God's humanity, like we're actually working as a whole to be the body of Christ.
Yeah.
Like, right?
Girl, I know. And I, taking that to the next level, I've been thinking about that between Christians. So, oh no, Martin's waking up.
Oh.
Okay, I have to go. Save that thought for next week. I love you. This was so good.
I love you too.
Okay, bye.
Okay, bye.